So this is it, guys. We hacked the game and we've gotten our flag and somebody's password. This is sick. What if I told you that AI could hack into any game that you have ever loved? So this is the Hack Simulator. This is an AI ChatGPT model that I've created myself on GPT-4, and I made a video on it actually last week. However, last week I was doing random hacking simulations. Even though I was simulating hacking stuff, it was not video games. So that's what this is about to be about. But since you guys loved the video from last week, we're going to do a part 2 this time. We're going to be hacking video games. That being said, let's get into some ethical hacking. So what's happening now is I said, please simulate hacking a popular video game. It's going through the introduction that I have told it to do. It's going to ask for our experience levels, and it's going to explain kind of what is happening, which is a capture the flag through hacking. You're going to be trying to hack into something, simulated hack into something, and get a flag, which is going to usually be some sort of valuable information that can cause, like a backdoor, exploit a vulnerability, or something similar. So this is what this is about. It's going to ask, again, our experience level. So I'm going to say we are beginner/intermediate, because you guys probably are not advanced hackers. So let's say that. Hopefully I spelled intermediate right. I think I did, but so now it's giving us a scenario. We are going to secure the game server. You've got a cybersecurity consultant hired by a developer of Galaxy Quest, a popular online multiplayer game. Recent threats have emerged indicating that hackers might attempt to exploit vulnerabilities in the game server to manipulate scores, steal user data, or even take the server down. Your task is to identify these vulnerabilities, exploit them to understand how they can be used against the system, and then provide recommendations to secure the server. Our objective is to conduct a recon to gather information about the server, identify any vulnerability using the tools, exploit a found vulnerability to gain access to part of the system, and locate a hidden flag within the system as proof of concept. Recommend measures to patch the vulnerabilities. This is like a real world penetration test. This is like someone hired you to hack into their system. This is sick. Now these are the tools we have available. We have Nmap, super popular hacking tool. It scans the different network and kind of maps it out. SQL Map, same thing, but with SQL databases to find SQL injection. And Metasploit, this is a very common framework for exploiting vulnerabilities. This is super useful if you are a hacker. These two are huge. I mean, obviously SQL Map, this is all important, but this is just a very good start. Now here, it's going to simulate an actual terminal for us, just like you are using Kali Linux, a very popular hacking operating system. It comes pre-installed with all the hacking tools you would need. Now it's actually simulating the first command for us, which is nmap, service version, and the IP address. So this is exactly what you would type into Kali Linux to scan for the different networks. And here we have these different ports that are open, and these are the services running on them. Now we can see here we have MySQL. So it's probably where we're going to use the SQL map and see if we can get a little SQL injection going on. Now we also have HTTP, so a little website, SSH, file transfer protocol. These are the stuff we got open. So now we have all of this information. What do we do next? We already did our Nmap scan. This is probably the first thing I would do if this is a real hacking situation. But what do we investigate further? Well, we do know that these are the tools we have available to us, but ignoring that, the smart thing to do, I would imagine, is just visit the website and see kind of the way it's structured. First, I'll just try this and see what happens, and it might say incorrect, but yeah, so actually that is our next move, so that's cool. So it is very realistic, and we're checking it out. The website is a basic interface for Galaxy Quest. There is a login form for users. This is important, login form. There's search function for looking up player stat names. Anything that you could type into is a possibility for SQL injection. So we do have two things we could type into here. And yeah, it's actually telling us, we said we're a beginner, so it's telling us how we could do a SQL injection. This is something we would put in to the actual text field. SQL is kind of like code, right? And code has comments. So code is something that is readable by the computer, and comments is something that makes part of a code not readable through the actual program, but able to be read by humans. So it's not actually interpreted by the program. Now what this does here is where you go to the login field, for example, you put in whatever username, whatever password, but you go and you say, or 1 equals 1, and it comments out everything else. And 1 is always equal to 1, and it's an or statement, so it's not, if it's not both need to be true, now it's just a 1 or the other need to be true. And 1 is always equal to 1, so regardless of what you have, you get in, you get access because 1 is equal to 1. And that is just a really basic SQL injection, and it shows you. So now you actually did your SQL injection. You check the HTML if you see an error message related to the database. We have an error in our SQL syntax. So, based on this simulated outcome, you would proceed to exploit this vulnerability to gain further access, possibly receiving user data or manipulating the database. So, something to mention, by the way, is this is AI. So, even though we know what we're doing, so we actually put in the link knowing that it'll simulate a website and then it pulls up the HTML, we could put in Linux commands, we know all this. But if you don't, this is AI, and that's the cool thing. You could just ask in pure English text or whatever language you speak, honestly, and it'll respond and tell you how to do something. So if you're lost, you could just ask. That's not something you could do when you're hacking something in real life, huh? Here it says we'd like to simulate exploiting the vulnerability, so I could respond in English. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to say man SQL map. So man means manual, and SQL map is the tool that was mentioned earlier that is available to us. So I'm just pulling up the manual to a tool that will allow us to exploit this SQL database here. So as you can see here, it's giving us a basic manual of SQL map, and it tells us how to use SQL map and the different parameters that we could put in. So here we put in the URL. After we put the U flag, which just lets it know that we're putting in a URL, and then the data we want to test, and all these other stuff that we could use. The P parameter test for SQL injection, dump to dump database table entries. So after we actually get some information, we can dump the data. Right now we're going to use the URL, and we're going to try the data for the basic SQL injection we talked about earlier. So let's try that real quick. So what we have now is SQL map, which is the tool at the URL here of whatever the IP address is /login, because it did mention there was a login section. And then for data, we put in this basic thing to test SQL injection and potentially get login access. So we hit enter there, just like it is a real terminal, and let's see if our command was actually right, or if there was something better we could have done. And it says it's a classic example of attempting to bypass authentication by causing the SQL query to always return true, as we talked about earlier. And it puts it here exactly as we had it in our chat, which is the terminal in this case. And we are connecting the SQL map. We got a little doggy there, which is pretty cool. And then this is exactly what the SQL map terminal would look like, which is sick. Well, the Kali Linux terminal after using the SQL map tool. This is so cool. So pretty much hacking through AI. We're hacking a video game server right now. So the username section is a or Boolean based section, which is injectable, but here it says the password is not injectable, but 1 is injectable. So it seems like we are going to get access, and we did here. So fetching the database, we have users and game stats. So as you can see, we can actually get the password hash here from the users who play this game, which is going to be useful if we want to brute force their password. It's going to be hashed, so we just run it through something like John the Ripper or Hydra and get the plain text hash after. But let's see, first we're going to have to dump all the passwords from there. So let's do that real quick. So yeah, here it says it managed to extract data from the users table, which includes usernames, password hashes, and other sensitive information. Now again, would you like to explore, attempt, so you can answer this in plain text, but we are not beginners. I mean, maybe a little bit, but we're going to actually use commands here because we can, and it's AI, so it's going to teach us if we get something wrong. So we're going to say SQL map, and I believe this is the syntax here, SQL map dump. So as you can see here, I put in SQL map dump password hash. This isn't actually the correct command. From my understanding, we would actually need to specify the actual flags and stuff of where we want to dump. But it's okay because it's AI and it's smart and it tells us when we can do something better. So now we have the hash here for the password, which is cool because this is somebody's password, but it is encrypted in MD5. It's an MD5 hash of the word password. So the password is password, but this is the MD5 hash version of it. But we want to take it one step further because we are not noobs. We want to get the actual plain text password because it tells us that it's password here, but what if we don't know that? So how do we do that? And in this case, we can run something like Hashcat, which is going to be something that decrypts hashes. So I'm going to say Hashcat H, which is help, and it's going to give us different commands that we can use with Hashcat to brute force or decrypt this password. So in this case, we probably go Hashcat -m and then 0, because that's what MD5 is in Hashcat, So it'll do an MD5 crack of that, and here it actually tells us exactly what we would do. So given the MD5 hash you found earlier, you'd use Hashcat to attempt to recover the plaintext password. Since we know this hash represents a common password, in a real situation, you would use a word list that contains common passwords to increase the chances of a successful crack. Would you like to simulate using Hashcat to crack this hash, or is there another aspect of ethical hacking you're curious about? Now, we already have the commands, but just to show you guys that this can work even if you don't know how to hack, I'll say yes, please show me, because say we don't know how to hack, and let's see what it does. Maybe it'll show us exactly the commands that we need. So something to note is in Kali Linux, there are pre-installed word lists that are common passwords that can be used by Hashcat or John the Ripper, or really anything. And a really common one is called rocku.txt, which is just a huge list of passwords that can be used to brute force. But in this case, we're going to be using correctpasswords.txt is what the file is called, and we're going to be comparing different passwords with this hash to actually crack the hash. And in this case, we got it. This is what Hashcat would look like as it's cracking stuff. It tells you device information, and here it tells you that it used Hashcat to crack the password that was in the MD5 hashing algorithm. This was the actual hash target that we wanted to crack, and this is the time and date that we started it. Pretty accurate, which is pretty cool. And the file that we used to compare against, and we got our password. This is a great way to learn how to hack, or just honestly play around. It's a capture the flag. Your goal is to try to find a flag, and in this case we actually kept on going past the flag. So let's say show me the flag. So in this case there was a table named secrets, and we used the SQL command select flag from secrets to get the actual flag, which is always going to start with shark and have pwned. So the flag is hacked by you 2024. So this is it, guys. We hacked the game and we've gotten our flag and somebody's password. This is sick. And this is all simulated through AI. So what we did first is we had an IP address. So we ran a network map scan on that IP address to see what ports were open. There was 4. The 2 important ones that we used were port 80 and 3306 for HTTP and MySQL. HTTP, we know that goes before our website, so it's probably a website. So what we did next was we went to that website. This simulates a terminal here, and it could simulate anything. So we just put that there, pretended to open a website, and we knew that there was a login form here and a search function for players to look up stats by username, which allowed us to use SQL map to see if those login fields were vulnerable to SQL injection, which they were vulnerable to SQL injection. So we ran a SQL map command to try to SQL inject that database or that website, which we were able to do through the username field, and found these tables here. We decided to dump the password hash, which gave us this, which was an MD5 hash. So we ran the MD5 hash through Hashcat to decrypt the hash and got the actual password. After we, like I said, Hashcat to compare it to cracked_passwords.txt, specified that it was MD5 hash, and we cracked the password here and got the plain text password, which was password. And then what we did was we decided to get the actual flag, which is usually representative of another vulnerability or some post-exploitation thing that you could do. So we got the flag here, which is pwned hacked by you 2024. This is sick, guys. So feel free to try this out yourself. I will leave it linked down below, and learn to hack some games. Let me know what you would like to see next. Love you guys. Peace out.